Hello. I have been trawling around the internet, looking at all sorts of articles and videos about Tommy Robinson, and it all gets quite confusing. So I thought that I would make a video about what we know right now. And I'm going to start from the top and work down to where we are today. Tommy was arrested whilst filming a live stream or live streaming from outside a courtroom in Leeds on the 25th of May 2018. He was live streaming the trial of a Muslim grooming gang. He was reading from an article which was published by the BBC, which is still available. So therefore he was talking about things that were already in the public domain. However, about 1 hour and 15 minutes into that live stream, he was arrested, which we all have seen. He was put before a judge by the name of Jeffrey Marsden, QC, and QC stands for Queen's Counsel. And Jeffrey Marsden sentenced Tommy to 13 months in prison. Now, this all happened within about 5 hours. And in fact, Jeffrey Marsden, the judge, sentenced Tommy over a civil offence. There are two types of contempt of court, one of them being a criminal contempt and the other being a civil contempt. Criminal contempt of court are, for example, a serious disruption in a courtroom, yelling at the judge, or refusing to testify before a grand jury. And civil contempt is when somebody fails to adhere to an order from the court. And it also states that civil contempt sanctions end when the person in contempt complies with the court order. Now we know now that Tommy attempted to remove the live stream from the internet, which means that he was attempting to comply with the court order. A court may order incarceration, i.e. imprisonment of people held in civil contempt. Those held in civil contempt must be given notice of the contempt sanctions and an opportunity to be heard. We know now that Tommy was not informed of why he was in contempt of court. Tommy was then, as I said, sent within 5 hours to Hull prison, where his legal team were told via telephone that he would be released the same day. Who said that? Who was it that said that Tommy would be released from custody? Because that was a lie. So he was in HMP Hull, and a short time after, he was transferred with no reason given to him, to HMP Onley, which has a 30% Muslim prison population. His cell was opposite the prison mosque. Tommy, through an interview with Tucker Carlson on Fox News in America, told Tucker Carlson that he suspected that the Muslim inmates who were people preparing food were tampering with his food, and therefore he did not eat it. Human excrement and spit were thrown around through his window in the cell, therefore he couldn't have his window open on what is a very hot summer in the UK, so no fresh air. And also his legal team arranged a visit to see Tommy in prison, and that visit was cancelled by HMP Onley. Who cancelled the visit? No one knows. It transpires that HMP Onley has stated that Tommy was treated fairly, and this was printed in the Daily Mail on the 3rd of August 2018. He was not in solitary confinement, that he had spent less than 48 hours in a care and separation unit for assessment of risk to his safety, which was undertaken by prison staff. He then joined the main prison population. I don't believe that. Had Tommy been in the main prison population with a 30% Muslim population in that prison, I don't think Tommy would be alive today. A prison risk assessment was taken where, if you research a bit about prison risk assessments, previous medical records have to be looked at. And Tommy has stated that he suffers from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, from a time that he was incarcerated before, and that would have been in his medical records. So the prison knew that he suffered from PTSD, but yet still threw him into solitary confinement, still put him opposite a Muslim mosque, allowed people to throw excrement through his window. They have to, the prison have to assess the status of the person. Who is the person who is in custody? Well, in this case it's Tommy Robinson, a well-known activist, a well-known person who is against radical Islam in the UK, and they have to assess the risk of harm from other inmates. So I would like to know who took that risk assessment and what the result of that assessment was. And I'm not sure, but maybe what's it called, where you can get the information, Freedom of Information Act. Maybe a Freedom of Information request can be put forward to get that information from the prison. I'm not sure if that would be allowed. So Tom is in prison, and there are so many rules and regulations concerning prisoners' welfare and prison rights if you look on the internet. For example, Article 10 of the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights from 1976 states that any person deprived of deprived of their liberty shall be treated with humanity and dignity. Focus on prisons should be reform and rehabilitation and not punishment. Article 7 of that same bill bans torture or cruel, inhumane or degrading treatment by guaranteeing those deprived of their liberty with the same conditions as that set for free persons. Well, none of that applied to Tommy Robinson, did it? The United Nations Standard Minimum Rules for Treatment of Prisoners, Geneva 1955, is not legally binding. They are more guidelines in law with respect to people held in any form of custody. And these guidelines focus on personal hygiene, clothing, bedding, food, exercise and sport, medical services, contact with the outside world, transfer to other prisons, books and religion, and so on. There is also something called the European Convention for the Prevention of Torture and Inhumane or Degrading Treatment or Punishment. There are so many rules, regulations, bills that really now will come back and bite the government in the arse, because none of these rules were held when it came to Tommy Robinson. None of them. So, after nearly 2 months in prison, Tommy's legal team managed to appeal his sentence. And the Supreme Judges of the United Kingdom, one in particular, Lord Burnett, said the decision to jail him, taken by Geoffrey Marson QC, within 5 hours gave rise to unfairness and without due regard to the rules. Lord Burnett criticised the Leeds judge, Mr. Geoffrey Marson, for not giving clarity about which parts of Tommy's live stream were in contempt of court. He also said that Geoffrey Marson ignored the fact that the film was deleted by Tommy, which means that, as I said previously, Tommy attempted to remove the live stream, apparently did remove the stream, and therefore the civil contempt rules end because the person who was in contempt complied with the court order. So therefore the contempt ended as Tommy complied with the rules. I will continue. Lord Burnett stated that Geoffrey Marson QC denied Tommy the chance to defend himself by not adjourning the case to another day. QC Geoffrey Marson did not give Tommy the particulars of the contempt. They were never spoken of to Tommy, so Tommy did not know what he was answering, you know. So after the appeal, Tommy was bailed. The Supreme Judge said that the contempt hearing was to be reheard at another date, and Tommy's only bail conditions were not to go within 400 metres of Leeds Crown Court. So Tommy goes home to his wife and family, and we are all very happy. And then Tommy speaks to Rebel Media News and Tucker Carlson from Fox News, and begins to tell the world about his treatment in prison, which has been denied by HMP only. Tommy was categorised as a Category C prisoner, and I've looked at the categories of prisons in the United Kingdom, and they are as follows. Category A is a high security prison for those whose escape would be highly dangerous to the public or national security. Category B, those who do not require maximum security, but for whom escape needs to be made very difficult. Category C, which is Tommy's category, those who cannot be trusted in open conditions, but who are unlikely to escape. And Category D, those who can reasonably be trusted not to try to escape. So Tommy, as a Category C prisoner, apparently cannot be trusted in open conditions, but was unlikely to escape. So the question is, why was Tommy not trusted? What did they not trust about him to do? And I think I have the answer to that. An open prison is somewhere where the prisoners have a lot of freedoms. They're not allowed to leave the prison unless they have to go to a place of work. But they have access to the internet and they have access to telephones and so on and so forth. They could not trust Tommy not to tweet and contact people about his about that day in Leeds, because they wanted it all to be kept under the rug, swept under the carpet, which didn't happen. Now, I have read Tommy's autobiography, which is called Enemy of the State, published in 2015. And this autobiography details Tommy's life and that of the start of the EDL and beyond. And you can read in that book how Tommy was, I'm going to use a word, persecuted by the authorities. Looking at the definition of persecution from the dictionary, Cambridge Dictionary, the definition is as follows: unfair or cruel treatment over a long period of time because of race, religion, or political belief. The question is Tommy being persecuted because of his opinions about Islam, which differ from the government's views about Islam? Is persecution a crime? And is persecution against one man by the government a crime? If it is, then what next? Because Tommy has a massive following, which is why he is free today, in my belief. The world knows about Tommy Robinson, but yet the British government have, in my view, persecuted this man for many years. If they can do that to Tommy Robinson, who has a worldwide following, what do you think that they can do to you and me, who have no following? Most of the world, 99.9% of the world, don't know who I am. If something like that happened to me or you, what are the chances that we would probably die in prison under the circumstances that Tommy endured? There are so many questions that need to be answered about Tommy's incarceration at HMP Onley. And those questions have to be addressed by the Home Secretary, Javid, what's his name? I was going to say Sadiq Khan, but his name's Sajid Javid, the Home Secretary. He needs to answer a lot of questions. The Governor at HMP Onley, Darren Hughes, has a lot to answer for. I think that they have to prove their statements that everything that Tommy Robinson was saying is a lie. I don't believe him, I believe Tommy Robinson. And not blindly. I believe him because what he has said throughout the years about Islam is true and has been proven to be true. I believe Tommy to be a trustworthy person, and I trust him. So, the deeper that I go into this, the more depressing it gets. Not just for Tommy, but for everybody. Because as I said, if they can do it to him, then they can do it to you. So, we need to think about that and do something before it does happen to you or me.